Welcome to the International Teacher Podcast with your host, Matt the Family Guy, Kent the Cat Guy, Jacqueline from JP Mint, and Greg the Single Guy, bringing you episodes from around the world about the best kept secret in education. You got it, international teaching. Welcome to the show.
Well, welcome to the International Teacher Podcast. I'm here with Kent the Cat Guy. Hi, Kent.
Hi, JP Mint. Good to see you again.
And Greg is away, but we have this fantastic guest who is an alumni of ITP, because if you go back to episode 25, you will hear Greg interview Tony DePrato. Tony, have I pronounced your last name correct? DePrato?
It's totally fine. I lived abroad too long to worry about it. My family says DePrato, but we're Italians from Kentucky, so I don't think we're an authority.
Welcome to the ITP again. Thanks for coming.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Welcome back, Tony. Great to have you.
So, Tony, I do have to admit, when I saw that you were coming on the show, I fangirled just a little bit because I've been following you probably religiously for about 3 years on LinkedIn. It's all about job postings, and sometimes it's interesting. Sometimes it's overseas, sometimes it's in the US. And it's kind of like when I see Tony DePrato has posted a photo, I click on it and I go, okay, what am I going to get today? And it's like, oh, sometimes it's a data, some kind of thing in the US, and sometimes it's head of school overseas. Can you tell us, like, how did you get into this LinkedIn and more than that, Pancake on a Stick? Can you tell us your elevator pitch, please?
Sure. Well, first off, I wouldn't call it an elevator pitch because every week I ask myself if I should just stop doing the newsletter. I'm like, should I keep doing this? I have a IT job, an IT career. So I'm a technology professional. Now, I do a lot of different things. And so, like right now, I'm building another Substack with a huge focus on helping schools free up their data. So like if you have like Veracross or PowerSchool or any of these other systems, eventually you grow to hate them. Just everybody hates them. So I'm working on a Substack just for people to be able to hack in, get their information out, use it how they want. So that's just kind of the focus. And I'm mixing that in with AI tools to show people how to use AI because if you use it right, it takes a huge chunk of the work out. So one person can do the job of like 4 people, which is usually what you have at a school, right? You have one person who has to figure out how to do a job of 4 people. So I've been working on that. But during the pandemic, what happened was I am a natural networker, and I feel like I have pretty good long-term, like 20-plus year relationships with people, and I stay in touch with them. So during the pandemic, people were stuck, and they needed jobs and stuff, so I was just like helping all these people, and I'm like, maybe I should just put this online. And so then, I have a website, but putting content on your website, your personal website with your CV and stuff, this kind of content isn't great. So I was already following a Substack. I'm like, hey, maybe I can use Substack. It's free, and I'll just make it free and open it up, and maybe, a few people will sign up, and then after the pandemic's over, I'll shut it down. But then I started, posting stuff, and I'm like, I can post anything I want, so I'm just going to always post, like, ridiculous memes, and I don't really care. So the more ridiculous the content got at the top, the more people joined. So I'm like, okay, this is working. So then just over time, like more and more people subscribe. So like every day I wake up and it's like there's a new subscriber. So if I go like 5 days in a row and I don't have another subscriber, I'm just going to shut it down. That's just like my plan. But so far that hasn't happened. Don't worry, I won't shut it down until after recruitment season. It's fine.
Yeah, but recruitment season is year long now.
Yeah, that's true. It's going. I would say, based on the data, it really stops around May, and that's because HR people go on holiday and they just don't update their ads. They just don't update their data. So that's something else that I do that's a little bit weird is I have tools that I use for work and I turn them against various school websites. So I know, like, have you been working on your website or not? Is this old? Is this new? So I have like an index of like, I don't know, like 1,300 web pages that I refer to like pull jobs from. Um,
Wow.
so, and I just did that to make it faster for me. So I've kind of built this whole little environment for harvesting jobs. So initially, like the first time I put out a newsletter, it took me like a week. But now I've got it down to I collect data all week, a little bit every day, and then uh, it takes me like an hour to put it all together. So every day I collect a little bit of data, clean it up, check it. Sometimes I see something that's dodgy. I feel like it's dodgy. My IT security instincts like this is wrong, spider sense. So then I reach out to somebody that works at the school, or I do a little deep dive to see, if it makes sense. And then if I find something that seems dodgy, I won't list the school anymore. I just forget it and move on until somebody tells me otherwise. So that's just kind
That's
of
what I
like,
liked about your pancake on a stick is that it feels somewhat vetted. It feels like you even are sometimes brutally honest, like, I'm not sure about this, but I'm going to put it anyhow. Or I don't know these people. Like you do sort of full disclosure. I don't know these people, or I've never used this service or what have you. And then you put it out there.
yeah, and I start getting more content on LinkedIn, and then recruiters will occasionally send me stuff. So that's a little bit different. So I try to like separate that out so it's clear. I don't want to muddle and mix stuff. And I like the fact that there aren't any ads. So, and I don't, before I had like a little donation thing so people could just donate with PayPal. But the US has changed the way the rules work for payment processing, which is why I had to switch over to the subscription. The PayPal was a lot more convenient, but I'm not really going to spend any money on accounting. So it needs to be
Yeah.
really easy for me. So I dropped the subscription down. So like before it was like donate like $7 or $12 a year. So now you can just subscribe for 1 month and cancel it. So it's $8 for a month. So that's kind of how I've left it. And people do subscribe. Like I have people who are signed up for like the whole year. So that's good.
Tony, if I may
Yeah.
jump in here, this is now just for our listeners. Substack is a web service that allows you to post your writings, and people can create accounts, and sometimes they can get free copies of your writing, and sometimes they can subscribe to receive your premium content. Do I have that semi correct?
That's correct. Yeah. There's a few different levels, but that's the general gist of it. They also have podcasting and some other stuff that you can do. And they've really expanded their tools, but there's no ads. You can't use it for affiliation. So like you can't run a Substack and link to an Amazon store, as far as I know.
Okay.
So it's like they're pure newsletters. That's why people that run Substacks kind of slowly try to build up subscribers, because there's no other way to like monetize your time, and
Okay.
that's really how it works. But it's a good platform for writers. I recommend it, and then
It's
it's a
it's a
little
pretty
community.
good platform. Like if I want to support the author of that material, I'm not having to go through a publishing house to pay them 90% of what a writer might make. So that money that I put down for subscription, that pretty much goes to the author at Substack. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah,
And-
the only chunk that comes out really is there's a payment processing chunk, but you can't avoid that with any of these systems.
No.
Yeah.
Now, do
No,
you
because I
have
was going
more
to say,
than one?
instead of PayPal, you might move to Stripe, but Stripe even has, 6 to
So
8%.
it is actually on Stripe now.
Ah,
So
okay.
yeah, so the PayPal, we had to go away from it because of the reporting rules. So that's kind of where I'm at. I do have two Substacks. My other
You
Substack,
have two.
yeah, I'm starting to grow slowly. The second one is a little risky because the second one actually has code on it that you can take and use in your environment. So I actually did about 20 articles over the summer that I didn't publish. I've just kind of stacked them up, and now I'm slowly releasing them, checking them, releasing them, checking them, releasing them. So we'll see where it's at in a year, but it's gonna be slow going. Like every write up for the other one takes a significant amount of time, but I think there's a little bit more of a commercial market for it, so I'm working on it slowly and then circulating it in very targeted circles. So for example, I had somebody reach out to me and say, for Power School work, we really need a source that is in Spanish. So I've been developing materials that I can use AI to convert to Spanish quickly. Um, and I'm working on converting some stuff over, so I have like a Spanish language version and an English language version, so that there's a lot of schools around the world that use Power School, but all the resources that you need that are not official, so all the communities are basically all in English. So it gets really complicated. So I'm kind of working on developing that content out. I haven't really started promoting it. I just kind of push it out there a little bit at a time and then get some feedback. Like I said, it's a little bit more connected to the work that I do and professional like certifications that I carry. So I had to be really careful about what I put out and what is suggested. Like the techniques that you use to do things in IT, there's a million ways to do them, but there's kind of a general, this is the right way to do it. So you always want to be as close to the right way as possible, or you spend all of your time just dealing with people complaining. I mean, you may not know this, but when you write code, there are some people who believe that you should only code with tabs. So every time you make a new thing, you should tab it over. And so their code looks like that. And then there are other people who are like, no, tabs, I don't like tabs, I want it all linear. And they'll just argue with each other all the time. So I don't want anyone to fight me. So I have to mix it up. So no tabs, some tabs. I'm always thinking about like, okay, is a tab hater going to hate this? So it's just.
I was a big fan of Tab in the 80s, but that was a different Tab. That was like the first Diet Cola that came out.
Yeah.
Hey, Tony, can you tell us a little bit about your international background? Because I think you were overseas for a little bit.
For a long time, actually. I haven't been back in the U.S. very long. I went overseas in 2002, and I did not come back until 2019.
Oh, okay.
So,
That's 17 years. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so 2002 to 2005, I lived in Japan. I studied Japanese and I worked like 4 jobs all the time. I didn't work at an international school. I did IT work, I taught English, I studied Japanese, and then eventually did public school teaching mixed with like IT work and some other just random stuff. And I did that for 3 years until my visa expired. And then after that, I had to make a decision. Do I want to stay here? And if I wanted to stay and like do more Japanese language commitment, I would have to work to get into a university job. That was really the only viable pathway. And while I was like contemplating it, a school in Dubai reached out to me, and they were opening a new high school division, and they wanted somebody to come in and start up a tech program. And so I made the leap, and I went to Dubai in 2005. And that was Dubai American Academy. I got there right as like they just kind of really expanded the high school, and they were building they were just building the lower school when I was there. So then I was there for 8 years, 2,400 students later.
Wow.
And then I went to China for 4 years, and then Korea for 2 years, and then back here.
And in China and Korea, was it the same type of job? It was in the tech department building up their systems?
Yeah, and the last 2 jobs were at boarding schools, so significantly more difficult work, but yeah.
And so when you come in as tech, are you also needing to do the boarding requirements, like responsibilities of helping tutor or
Well,
monitor or supervise?
It depends. In Korea, the answer to that was yes. Everybody that lived on campus had to have some kind of duty. But in Korea, I was director of technology and I was the vice principal for the high school. And I managed, like scheduled and helped run with a team, not by myself, with a team, the tutoring program that happened 4 nights a week, and was pretty intensive. It was all the high school, all the middle school, and it took about 7 staff every night. All the staff had to be teachers, kind of working on a
Wow.
rotation. And then on the weekends, admin on campus duty, like being responsible in case something happened. And then occasionally kids wouldn't have any place to go on holidays, so I would take care of them and take them on little trips around the island where we were living,
That
things
was
like that.
Jeju.
Yeah, that was Jeju.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to repatriate back to the States?
Growing family and it just living on Jeju means like 3 flights, 2 flights really just to get out of the country, and 3 flights to get back to North America, and then you're still not done. Like it was a lot of work, and at the time we just had one child, but we're like, we want him to grow up for the next few years really close, like closer to his family, and also I believe the first few years of language development are really important, so I wanted him to have that. But then since we've been back, we've had 2 more kids, so now we have 3 kids.
And where are
So,
you located now?
In Mississippi. And I like
Oh,
to tell
okay.
people when I say Mississippi, they kind of stare at me, and I always like to tell them it's a state in America. So they're like, "What?" Because most people, I'm from Kentucky, so I'm used to people not knowing anybody from where I'm from. So I'm like, most people don't know someone from Mississippi, or they don't realize they know someone from Mississippi. So yeah, so we
yeah,
moved
because my
here
my thought
in
as a
2020.
Canadian was immediately Mississippi. Is that in Tennessee? Then you
Where are you
said it's a
from
state.
in
I was like, oh yeah, right. It's
Where are you
its own
from in
state.
Canada?
I'm from Ottawa.
Mm.
And I've
So
actually traveled to Mississippi. So, I should have known. I have the fridge magnet. It's a very oblong,
it is,
because they
yeah.
can't fit it all in on the fridge magnet.
My wife's from Winnipeg, and all 3 of my children are dual citizens.
Oh,
Yeah,
fun. So they can.
yeah.
Now, do they have to decide at 18 or can they keep both passports?
No, they can keep both.
Nice. I grew
There's,
up with a girl born in Chicago, and when she turned 18, she had to decide, and she decided American, and she's an actress in Hollywood, so it was a good thing.
Tony, did you keep up with the Japanese?
my Japanese, sometimes I think I still have it, and then my son asked me, he's like, "Dad, what's the Japanese word for sun, like up in the sky the other day?" And I was like, I have completely forgotten that word. So I don't know. I think my vocabulary is really bad. There's some Japanese families here. I try to like have casual conversations with them,
Great.
but
Yeah.
I've been back to Japan a lot. Like actually almost every year between 2005 to 2000 to 2018, almost every year I went back. We would go there for vacation. And then I told my son when he's 8, I'm going to take him there on like a father-son trip. So before I do that, I'm going to have to do some like major like refresher, so I'm ready for things like the pharmacy, you know.
Well, I can
Fantastic.
recommend Duolingo. It has an interesting reputation. At first, as a language teacher, I didn't like Duolingo. I went into it. I said, no, this isn't going to replace me. But they've really done a lot of work behind the scenes, probably something that you would know about, like the coding and everything. And now the gamified learning of a language is really interesting. And so I'm on Duolingo every single day. So I do like it to keep up and
Hmm.
also learn more of my languages so I don't lose them.
All right, well, I'll keep that in mind in a year and a half when I need to do a crash course.
Tony, you got a new project you're working on. I was wondering if maybe we can turn our attention to you telling us about something that's you've been spending a lot of time and thought on lately.
Yeah, so I've launched a salary survey, and here's a little background. If you're in IT, you do these salary surveys fairly frequently with different or professional organizations. And they're incredibly powerful when you're negotiating a contract, especially if you want to change states, cities, or countries. I pulled my first data from a salary survey um, when I was in China, actually, because there was a big problem with our staffing. So our Chinese staff were underpaid because they were hired a few years ago and the market was cheaper. So they were getting their raises, but their raises were based on an old starting salary.
Hmm.
So all of them could walk outside the building, take a right, and get a better job in 5 minutes. And that was literally the situation, because they
And
all
was that
had
happening?
a good skill set. It hadn't happened yet, but the main like IT manager came to talk to me, and he's ready to go. And I was like, I need you to give me like 2 weeks. Just give me 2 weeks. Let me work on it. And I don't know if you've ever dealt with a Chinese HR department, but it's not easy to do. And you have to be very, very like strategic about it. It's not a complaint, right? You have to literally somehow encompass the entire city to show them that they're standing out and all the other companies are doing this. So I found that Kelly Services had published a huge salary survey for companies in Shanghai who were hiring teams that were both Chinese and foreign. And they had all these tech jobs. And so I took all this data and I went in and I was like, look, here's the deal. Here's what this person does. And this is our city. And this is what he should be paid, like median. Not average, just the median value according to the survey. And I'm like, this is all the major companies. And, you know, we're not going to be able to keep staff if we don't get closer to this number. And they agreed with me. And I was like, okay, well, this is a good approach. And then I got access to some salary information for international schools through a training that I did. And so I used that information when I was like negotiating my contract for Korea, and that worked really well. And then I signed up for a couple other professional organizations for tech, and I've used their salary surveys every single time I've needed to either negotiate my contract or change jobs or whatever. So I'm like, we really need just more transparency, but everyone is worried about providing information. And, you know, schools don't, I would say that most employers, if they're not freely providing this information on a chart, they don't want to give it out.
Yeah, if they don't have a salary grid, they don't want. In fact, I've been to schools where it was in my contract. If I discussed my salary with anyone on staff, it was a fireable offense, which is a big red flag for me.
Yeah, and but that's, you know, it's incredibly common. And there's I can see, you know, I can see both sides of it. Part of the work that I do is even here. There's a pretty big HR component to like policies and procedures, and then data privacy and all this stuff we have to know. So I get it, like I understand it, and I understand kind of both sides of the issue. But the fact is that when you look at the entire world and you want to know where can you move, you need to come up with like a value. It's not about money as much as like a metric, like a value. When you compare two places that might look the same in terms of like your money, but actually you're not going to save money there, or you may make less but save money. I mean, there's all these different factors that go into it. Now, on top of, you know, believing that salary surveys are good, I've had some pretty horrific conversations with people since I've been doing the newsletter. And I'll talk to my wife and I'm like, these people are in trouble. Like they have no idea. I spoke to someone last year about their school, and I'm like, is this a good school? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, is your, you know, I didn't ask them how much money they made, but I'm like, are you making enough money? And they're like, well, I really don't know. And I was like, well, when you look, you know, how much money do you bring? Like, okay, well, how much money do you bring home every month? Just blunt with them. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what my net income is. And I was like, what? And then I was talking to my wife.
Don't you have a
like,
bank account?
My wife is like, I know lots of people like that. And I was like, they don't know how much money that they're making, like not receiving, but actually keeping, right? Like there's a difference in how much goes in and how much you keep. And then I talked to some other people. I talked to somebody that told me that the job that they had paid less than a job that they had in like the early 2000s. So I was like, but the place that you're living has increased in price by like 30%, and you're making less money. What's your long-term plan here? You know? And then I think part of it too is people might have a misconception about other places, like, you know, what's their lifestyle going to be like and all these other things. So that's another thing that motivated me. It's just that I want to give people tools to make better decisions when they're recruiting. My friend Patrick and I, we were discussing having like a live, like sending people like little earbuds, so when they were doing negotiations, we could be in their ear remotely during recruitment fairs and tell them exactly what to say. And that was just kind of
Well,
a
I do
joke.
like that tagline. You have that tagline, or had it in your Pancake on a Stick newsletter. It was, contact me. I can help you negotiate for a better package,
And I've
and
done
it'll
that.
be worth it.
I've probably only done that about 3 times. Most people, because I'm usually like, if you donate or do a subscription, I will help you negotiate contracts. And a lot of people are just like, I don't need that. And here's my thinking. Let's say a subscription. This is, and I don't want to sound like, I don't want to be off-putting, but just let me frame this. Let's say I say a subscription's $50 a year. Do you think I might be able to get you $50 more? Yeah. Do you think I might be able to get you $100 more? I think I probably can get closer to $1,000 more. So that's kind of my selling point there. But a lot of people just are like, yeah, I'm just going to sign and move on. And that's totally fine. But the offer is always out there. So anyway, the survey is designed to collect a lot of important information, and almost every field is required. That's made a couple people angry, but I just haven't. I can't. It's funny as I can't respond to them because it's anonymous. So
That was going to be my question.
yeah,
So
it's totally
it is
anonymous.
anonymous.
It's
Okay.
totally anonymous. But I had to layer it with questions to filter out bad data. Like there's been a couple of posts that I'm not going to include in the data because I can just tell that they're garbage. Like they didn't take it seriously. But one thing that I find interesting, I asked this question. What's the highest tuition that your school charges for like the oldest group of children? And I asked that question, and then I asked them what the enrollment is. So maybe your school charges $12,000 a year for high school, and there's 200 students in the school. Well, those are the only two numbers we need to figure out what your general revenue stream is. And from that, we can extrapolate about how much it costs to run the school based on the location and about what the salaries look like. So sometimes those numbers don't line up. So sometimes those numbers indicate that the school is bringing in a tremendous amount of revenue. So if they're not sitting on a ton of debt, so that means if they haven't recently built a campus, that's really all it means. If they haven't really recently built a building, they're not sitting on a ton of debt, then they probably can give you a raise. That's what that means. And so we can.
You don't distinguish between for-profit and non-profit then.
No, and the reason is I've done like school finance planning with people that build schools, and when they model the financial plan for the school, they say it's irrelevant if the school's profit or nonprofit, because a for-profit school will use its money to generally try to increase student numbers. So they'll reinvest in the school faster. They may not invest in salaries, okay? If no one tells them to, they're going to put their money into facilities and resources. But for-profit schools have investors. Those investors, some of them are first in, first out, so they got to pay them off first. A nonprofit school, they may not have normal investors, but they probably have people who help them raise money. And then the nonprofit school, they've got to give their money back to something. They're not going to just save all of their money. A nonprofit school is going to do something with it. So the money is going to go somewhere. Now, some of it should be saved. They should build some kind of investment for the school. They should plan on putting money aside for buildings. We don't really know how they're going to manage it. But when you talk to these financial planners, they're like, look, the money is going to basically go somewhere, and it really just depends on where the money goes. So to your point, both non-profit and for-profit schools can make the same bad decision with money. So if you know that the revenue is there, there's no reason not to ask for a raise. If you're working at a school that's broke and has no revenue, and you can't ask for a raise, and you know that, that's a choice you've made. But what if there is revenue and you just have been told oh, we can't do raises. Well, why? Well, because we're going to launch a marketing campaign that's going to cost $2 million. Do you see there's a difference, right? So it's just kind of getting an idea of the financial health of the school against its region or country, wherever it's at.
All right, let's take a moment for a little commercial about how to get in touch with us. You can, of course, find all four of us at the itpexpat.com. That's www.itpexpat.com.
Or you could also find us at email at internationalteacherpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
Or if you're into Facebook, we have a new Facebook group at www.facebook.com/groups/ITPexpat, where you can find all kinds of inside information about ITP Expat.
You can also find us on Instagram at ITPXpats. That's with an S. ITPXpats is our handle.
All right, and thank you, listeners. We have over 100 countries represented by our listeners, and though we're not monetized, we are here for you, and we would like to thank all of you for listening. So let's get back to the show.
Tony, I just want to jump in here. I got a whole bunch of thoughts running through my head. The first one is that I don't think there's anything new about the dynamic of an employer having money in their coffers and then not being reluctant to share it with the employees. That doesn't seem to be new, but what seems to be new to me is that are you finding successful ways to get it out of the coffers and into the employees' hands through negotiation? I'll just leave it at that. I mean, do you think that just pointing out that there's money there is enough to get someone a raise when they ask?
Generally, yeah. I think as long as there's some room to move, you can make a case, because what we know is that most people don't ask. We know that.
Yeah.
Now, there's different types of contracts and there's different types of financial designs too. So let's take a place like DACA. At least back in like 2015, 2016, I think they had this rule that if you were foreign, you could only work there for 5 years. So in and out, 5 years, one visa.
I've heard this, yes.
Schools with that setup generally pay very fairly, and they never give you a raise. It's like, hey, it's a 5-year contract. We want you to stay the whole time. This is how much money you're going to make. So that is a very transparent and easy decision to make. And they can even tell you the savings rate, and you can easily look up the cost of living, and you're clear. But let's go to the UAE, where raises connected to tuition can't happen unless the government approves your tuition levels, which is connected to your inspection. So you could be doing everything you want that you think is great, and everybody's happy. So the UAE gets hit with inflation. It goes from like 3% to 6%. Speaking of somebody who went through this overnight, and then to the point where you went into restaurants and all the menus were taken down and they were handwriting prices. Okay. What can the school do? Well, okay, we want to raise tuition. They have to go to the government. The government's like, you want to raise tuition? We'll give you an inspection. You do your inspection. It was pretty good, but this one thing was a little off. So instead of being able to go up 3%, you can go up 1.5%. And it's kind of like saying, well, I can buy the car if I have $10,000, but I only have $9,000. Well, you can't buy the car. That 1.5% actually isn't going to help you. So there are a lot of situations like that where schools might not be in a position to give you any more money, whatsoever. And you just need to decide, is this temporary? Is this long-term? Are they going to take a temporary situation and then say, hey, this is a policy? So we're temporarily financially strapped, but then once they come out of it, they maintain it. So I had somebody already reply to my survey Two people actually. One said they hadn't had a raise in 9 years, and the other one said they hadn't had a raise in 7 years.
So they'd been at the same school for 7 and 9 years and had not seen
Yeah.
even that increment. Like I often think, those transparent salary grids are horizontal and vertical. So horizontal, usually like education, if you're maxed out in the column master's plus or something, but then it's like 0 years, 1 year, 2 year. And I don't know that there has ever been, I've never seen like, is there a maximum? But you're saying they don't have that. So they've just stayed at the same salary for 7 and 9 years.
Yeah. So the question is, if you want to stay in the country or the city, what's the median value there? Like, are there other people reporting that they're doing the same exact job, but making more money, saving more money? And if you were to move across the street and work, like if they don't have children, it's easy. If they do have children, it's harder. So there's all these different factors you have to weigh. But I think developing just the conversation is good, but as a tool, what I'm trying to do is convert all of this into a fairly simple metric. So when you're looking for a job, you're like, okay, I'm a math teacher. Here's kind of how the countries are ranked for saving money. Just not how much money I'm going to make, but saving money. Here's the median income, and I use that a lot because you can't really use the mean or the modal value, because somebody with an overinflated income or an incredibly low income throws both of those off. So we're going to use I always look at the kind of the high median and the low median and say, okay, here's my range. So anything in
So
that range is fair.
for our non-math listeners, median is the number that shows up the most.
Median is the middle number.
It's the middle number. So if we have an array of numbers, it's the number in the middle. So if you take the number in the middle and then you go up like 2 and then you go down 2, that builds you a range. So you'll know if you're in that range if it's fair, and then you'll have an idea like, and I haven't figured out if I'm going to color code it or just put a number on it, but I'm trying to get this down to a number. Like, hey, working in China right now is a 7, and this is what that means. So that people can make quick decisions when they're...
But are you taking years of experience into account? Because I would think that would throw, like years and education would throw
So you would
a
think
wrench
that,
into it.
You would think that, but contracts are all over the board. I have a friend who, this kind of happened accidentally, but now he just makes it a practice. He doesn't look for jobs until like May. Do you know why? Because he can ask for how much money he wants to start in August. He's single, no kids, can get visas really quick, and can live anywhere. They're not going to say, oh, well, like, I know you've never taught this before. We think you're qualified. We need a teacher. So the years of experience, especially if you look at those charts, as you get higher up, they generally get smaller in growth. And also, a lot of times to recruit teachers, schools will say, look, you've only been doing this 2 years. We're going to start you with 6 years of experience. We're going to start you on that bracket.
Yeah.
Well, so that's why I don't really look at it. Plus, if we're looking at the median, so we're looking at kind of 2 above and 2 below, we're building a pretty wide range. So it should encompass it. And also, compared to the United States, international schools hire really quickly. Okay? So like in the US, if you want a job at my school and we desperately need a teacher, you will do 3 or 4 interviews. You'll have to come to campus. You might have to do a demo lesson. It'll take 4 to 6 weeks for one candidate. If you're an administrator, the interview process from interview to acceptance could take like 2 months. Okay? So compared to international schools where you like do like an interview and then you get a follow-up and then 4 days later you have a job offer. So the school has like decided, they have like a recruitment plan. This is how much money we have. Here's our goal to offer people. Once they come up with that target number, that's what they're working from. So they may say, okay, all the people who are step 7, like this is our target number. But then they'll get a bunch of people who are right below step 7, a little bit above, and they'll say, hey, what if we have this person who is almost like step 10, but we offer them the step 7? I mean, if you've got 4 or 5 candidates, are you going to offer them all the maximum? I mean, most people won't do that unless they're in a country that requires it. Like, you have to offer this. This is what we've approved. So I think
Tony,
that,
let me.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, sorry. I know you're still answering that
I talked
question.
too much.
Tony, how much data do you need to have confidence in your results, and how much have you collected so far?
Okay, so I've thought about this quite a bit. So first off, I look at like my estimate of the total number of people who would fit into like the international school market. It's actually a pretty small market. It's not that big compared to like being in a country with schools. So I think if we can get 200 quality responses, that would represent at least somewhere between 10 and 15% of the people who are recruiting. So that means that data would be useful for maybe that data would represent about 2,000 to 2,500 people's worth of information that they need. So let's say every year about 2,000 people are recruiting for jobs and moving around. If we have information from 200 current employees at a variety of schools, we'll be able to build a decent picture of what they need, tools that they need to help them negotiate on their own, or just evaluate a piece of paper that comes in their email. So right now, I think I'm at about 120, so I need about 80 more people to cross the line, and then I'm going to keep pushing to get as many as I can.
And tell me a little bit about the drama. You said that you've been getting some pushback from schools or heads of school or something, like they're really upset about your survey. I want to know about the drama.
It was like there's some. So I'm in some social media groups, and I actually don't really publish my newsletter on social media. I'll publish it maybe once a year and just say, hey, if you didn't know, I have a newsletter, and then I move on. I don't really like dealing with social media very much. But when the survey came out, I'm like, there's some groups I could share my survey in. So you have to post, it has to be approved. And usually when I post something, it goes out like that, in a couple of hours. Days went by, and it's just sitting there. And just sitting there, and I'm like, they're not gonna approve this. They're worried that if they collect salary information, that some administrator who's part of the group's gonna get mad. So that's really it. And then I've only had like 18 people actually fill out the comment box at the end of the survey, which isn't a lot of people. And most of their comments were really just around like, why are there so many required questions? Like, well,
this is too long.
I have to make sure that you're human because I'm not asking for your email or your phone number, so that makes it longer. And then secondly, part of it too, and this maybe is just my personality, but I wanted them to look up some of the answers. Like I want you to know.
Yeah, when you were talking about tuition, I was like, I wouldn't know that of most of the schools that I was at.
How much kids are paying to go to your school. It makes a difference. Like it actually makes a difference, in my opinion, in your job performance. So I know that my school where I work at now is considered expensive. But is it a good value? And if I think that price level is a good value, then I'm going to always maintain that value, right? If I'm working somewhere that I don't think is a good value, but I like the organization, that's a great conversation to have. Hey, how can we make our school a better value? Not lower the tuition, but how can we make sure that we're giving these people all that they're paying for? So, and maybe it's just because I'm working administration that I kind of think that way, but I believe that understanding the value that families are getting is important. And I think teachers need to know generally what the sacrifice some people are making to pay for their kids to go to the school is. Because some of the people paying these high tuitions aren't rolling in money. They're working 2 or 3 jobs. They want the kids to be at your school. And I think if you know that parents are really working hard to keep their kids in your school, it just makes you happier and makes you want to do more. I really believe that. And you see that, with customer feedback and stuff at normal companies. I mean, that's the reason that they're always trying to get customers involved and get customer feedback and customer voice out there. But when we hear from parents in school, they're generally just complaining because they're worried about their children. It's not, they're like so worried about all these different aspects of their children. So I think it's important for people to know. And then also, like, you should know what your enrollment numbers are generally, because if you check that number, and you should check that number every year, if it's trending down, you probably should look for another job. And if it's trending up, you should probably ask for more money. So,
Tony, where can people find your survey?
Oh, I've got my survey actually on my newsletter, but what I'm going to do is when we're done, if it's okay, I'm going to send you the survey link, and you can put it in your notes for
And
your
we'll put it in
podcast.
the show notes.
Is that okay?
Fantastic.
And I was
That would
going
be
to
great.
say, if this becomes like episode 25, it's part of our archive, do you think you foresee doing this every year, like refreshing the information?
I think with international schools, the way that contracts work, I would probably do it every other year. I wouldn't do it every year.
Every couple of years. Yeah.
Because it's kind of I can run the survey for a long time. I'm probably going to cut it off in December. Maybe before December, because I need to process it, actually. So I might take the existing data, copy it, and start processing it like end of October-ish, so it's ready for middle of November. And then I'll close the actual survey maybe at the end of December, and then incorporate that new data for after Christmas, like after New Year's. But, that's the goal. And then, obviously, I want to make the survey available like in different formats to people. So I'm probably going to do some kind of dashboard that people can look at. And then for people who are subscribed to the newsletter, I'll send them, just like a hard copy, more detailed report. So if you just want to look at it online, it'll be there. But for newsletter subscribers, I'll probably just email them directly, like a PDF report that they can use.
Sweeten the pot, sweeten the deal.
Exclusive to the ITP listener.
Yeah, and obviously, anyone supporting the survey gets a copy. Don't worry.
Are you going to be calling it like the Tony list, or the Pancake list? Like, what is this going to be called? Because you got to think, like, if it becomes something that happens every couple years, it would be good to have sort of a tagline, and people will be like, "Hey, did you participate? Did you see the Tony list?"
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought about a brand for it. I'll wait and see what the most ridiculous, angry comments I get are, and then use that to craft the name. I think it's the better way to do it.
The garbage list. This is garbage.
I guess we can't call the awards the Tonys. I think that one's been taken.
Yes.
I could call it something like the unofficial and highly inaccurate salary survey, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we kind of wind down, I'm going to ask for comments from both of you. JP Mint, do you want to jump a little into Tony's private life? Do you want to throw out some questions? How do you want to do this?
Well, because you've surprised me now with the 19 years overseas. I didn't know it was
17.
Yeah, I didn't know it was that long of a stint. So, we typically have a couple questions for our guests. We'd love to hear, did you ever have a run-in with the law?
So I did not, but with the job that I do, I've had to assist in a variety of legal issues with employees. And so I've had a few interesting things happen. I can't get into a lot of details.
Would that include like IT audits and things like that, or direct
like
human
checking
resources
emails?
type thing?
No, I mean, to be honest with you, I was thinking about this. I saw it in your paper. Most of the stuff I've had to deal with is pretty horrible. Like,
Wow. Ooh.
I was at I was in my office one day, and the student who I really liked was in trouble, and the police were at school, and they brought me a cell phone, and they're like, we need to extract all the data off of his phone, you know, and you know, and that those types of situations happen. They probably happen to me like once every other year, something like that, where I'm called into some kind of meeting, like you need to like get the data off of this, look at it, make a report. Those aren't fun. I've had so with my job, I generally report back to school earlier than other people. So I will be back to school a week or two before any other administrators. And that's always been interesting too, because if something has happened over the summer, I am the first one that walks into it. So one year I got back, and the head of operations, who's this Lebanese guy, he calls me on the phone, and he's like, "Hey, do you know this couple?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." He's like, "We got a problem in their apartment." And I'm like, "Well, they're in the United States." He's like, "Just come to the office." So I go to the office, and he's like,
Oh no,
he's
Tony.
like, the security guards have called me, and they said that there's like a group of people in their apartment, and they're running like an illegal business. That's all I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to say anything else.
All right.
And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, they're getting ready to call the cops, and it's going to be bad. And the school owns the apartment, so this is why he's involved.
Holy cow.
Wow.
Does this couple know this is happening?
They don't yet. So then I'm like, okay.
Oh my god.
I'm like,
Wow.
it's like 3 a.m. Where they're at. Give me like 4 hours. I'll get them on the phone early in the morning. So I call, I call them, and they're shocked. I'm like, hey. I'm like, do you know, like, did you leave your apartment unlocked? Like, what's going on? And they're like, well, we have a friend, and we sublet our apartment to them to make extra money in the summer. So now we're at like, you can get fired for doing that, and it's illegal. And this person, okay, so what had happened is they sublet to this guy. This guy sublet their apartment, and then he left for the summer. He wasn't even living in it. And then the people he sublet to were literally running like really bad business out of the apartment. So
Wow.
I was like, okay, well, I need his number right now. Like, I got to talk to this person. So I got a hold of that person who I didn't know, and I just prefaced it. I'm like, look, I know you don't know me, but the police are getting ready to raid this apartment. Your name is on it as a sublease, and that's who we're going to report. So then you've got 24 hours. And then he made a call, and all the people just vanished out of the apartment. And then the school had to go over and assess the damage and get it all fixed up. And yeah, so
Did that couple keep their job?
they did keep their job. They did.
Yikes.
So I didn't say anything about the sublet. I just said they let a friend stay in the apartment, which
Yeah.
was not
Okay.
uncommon. But yeah,
Right.
so it was like a double sublet scam situation.
Well, let that be a
I
cautionary
understand.
tale to the ITP
I know.
crowd.
I understand the temptation. I understand the temptation of because it's like it's sitting there for 2 months empty, you know, couch surfing or something like that. But oh my gosh, let that be a warning to our listeners. Do not
Yeah,
try
it's-
and sublet because you never even know. I would have thought somebody sublet would sublet.
Yeah, it's
Yowza.
a really good scam, right? Because like the couple's out of town,
Mhm.
and so
And you got 2 months.
you got 2 months, you can make some money. So
Here's my question, JP. I got this last one covered.
All right.
Tony, in 18 months, you and the 8-year-old son visit Japan. What are 3 things that you are absolutely going to show your son about Japan?
well, I'm gonna take him to some mountain areas. I'm gonna take him to a ninja castle, which is fake, but he'll like it.
I would like that too.
Take him to Himeji so he can see a real preserved castle. it's easier to get to than the Black Castle in Matsumoto, which is really nice. But take him to Himeji, and then probably probably do Nara so he can get chased by deer.
Oh, the deer. Yes, that's good.
Yeah,
Maybe
and
do they
generally
have the monkeys too at Nara? Okay.
no, well, I'm sure they
No.
do, but if people aren't aware, never, ever, ever engage monkeys in Japan. Don't stare at them. Japanese monkeys are notorious for just attacking you if you look at them.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
and then I don't
The
know if
ones the ones that are in those hot spas, that's the ones I
yeah,
always
and they
see, you know, in
they
the
steal
water.
your purses, they steal all your stuff. I'm against monkeys generally. I don't like to be around them. So, I want to get him on. I want to get him on that high-speed rail, but generally kind of stay out of the big cities, and do some stuff in the countryside. There's a little town kind of in the center of Japan called, it's not little, it's like 600,000 people, but called Gifu in Gifu Prefecture, and I like that town a lot. And there's a lot, it's very walkable and close to nature, rivers. They have this cool fishing that they do where these birds catch the fish, and then the birds drop the fish out of their mouth into a basket, and you just eat the fish.
Wow.
I've heard this. Yes.
And my son will think it's gross, so I want him to experience it. But yeah, so that's probably the plan.
That's a great trip. I would like to sign up for that trip myself.
Yeah. Tony DePrato tours, we can just
That's right.
have those Japanese tours. People can just sign up with you.
JP Mint,
so people
final,
can reach out.
Yes.
Yeah, so people can reach out to you, Tony, on LinkedIn. They can find you. Actually, just to let our audience know, it's Anthony, Tony in brackets, DePrato,
Yeah.
on LinkedIn. And you mentioned a website, but I didn't know about this. Do you have a website you want to share with our listeners?
Well, I have my personal website, which is just my name, but also pancakeonastick.substack.com.
Okay.
And actually, I think I have a referral link for Pancake on a Stick that's way easier. I just never use it.
And we didn't get to the story behind Pancake on a Stick. You said it once in one of the newsletters.
Yeah.
Why
so
you use that?
I use it because it's hilarious. The name is ridiculous, but I'm
'Cause you
from
remember it, for
Kentucky.
sure.
I'm from Kentucky, and it just always reminds me of just ridiculous stuff that happens if you grow up in a small town. And my brother was living with some people a couple hours away from our home, and my dad called once when we still had answering machines, and he left this really embarrassing message for my brother in, I would say, a completely fake, over-exaggerated Kentucky accent. Okay. And the story was all about how he took my stepmom out for their anniversary, and he bought her a pancake on a stick at the Sonic, drive up and eat, which I don't even think was true. And it's like the worst anniversary dinner you could even think of, going for a pancake wrapped up on a stick that you dip in syrup. It's just horrible. And he talked until my brother's answering machine ran out. So then
Back in the days when there was a limit.
my brother's roommates came home and they listened to it, and then they were smart enough to make a copy of it. And then there was this party, and everybody's hanging out, and then they played it out loud for the entire party. And then they would take this recording and parts of my dad's voice, this over-exaggerated Kentucky sound, and all these ridiculous comments he made, and they would call people up and play it over the phone, and just prank call people with it. And then years later, they would call my brother up on three-way calling, and these guys and my brother had memorized the script and divided it into parts and turned it into kind of a role play. And they would go back and forth. And this just goes on for a decade. And my brother, when I would go home, I would just make him act it out. And it didn't matter how many times everybody heard it. We just started laughing. Even my dad just breaks out laughing and laughing. It's just so ridiculous. Like this whole concept of taking somebody for this anniversary dinner to get this horrible food, right? That I don't even think exists. Like we've tried to find it. I'm like, does that even exist? Like
I think there's a product there. I mean, a
I
Tony
think there's an
DePrato
idea.
pancake
Yeah,
on a stick. I
so-
think there's a product.
And here's why I really use it. So when you're sitting down and you want to write something or work on something outside of your job, you have to change your mindset. So if you had a horrible day at work and you want to come home and like create a product for people that you think is helpful, you're not going to do that. You're going to make a horrible product. You're going to write poorly. And when you're doing your research, because a lot of my content, I kind of make a joke about it, but I have to look through like a lot of badly organized data. And sometimes I'm like, should I just tell these schools how to fix their websites so then I don't need to put out a newsletter? But anyway, you have to go through it, and your ability to comb through it and make a judgment is kind of based on your mood. So I can look at that name and think about that story for 10 seconds, and I am in a good mindset. And so that's why I do it. And then also I think
Nice.
it goes well with the memes. I feel like I can put any meme under that heading.
Well, I think you're going to be getting a lot more subscribers, and I also think people should head to that survey because it's not going to be monetized. You're not going to sell the Tony list. I still think it should be called the Tony list, but you're not going to sell it. You're doing this for the help of others for them to be able to negotiate, and that's why I think a lot of our listeners are going to hear this and go and sign up.
Tony, do you have any final thoughts you want to share with the ITP crowd before I take us out?
I think my only thought is that, you never get your time back. So these decisions that you make about your career, your life, like your savings, they impact you long term, and you need to take them seriously. And you don't want to be at a certain point and be like, man, I should have taken that seriously. And I'm honestly seeing that more and more than I used to, and it's concerning. So, take it seriously. My simple redirect link, what I made so that people can find it easier, is pancakeonastick.live.
Oh,
Great.
okay.
Yeah. And that takes them to the substack.com.
It does. It makes it easier to find.
Okay. Let me go ahead and let everyone know where to find you. I would like to thank my co-host, JP Mint. Thank you very much, JP Mint. You can find her at jpmintconsulting.com. Thanks, JP. Our guest, I would like to thank Tony DePrato, for joining us. You can find him at the links below. It is pancakeonastick.substack.com. And we really encourage you to take a look at his newsletter, subscribe, and check out his survey, his salary survey, to help international teachers all around the world help make better decisions. Thank you so much, Tony.
Yay!
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I'm Cat the Cat Guy. You can find me in room 303, finishing off that last piece of cake from the faculty lounge. Thank you so much for joining us.